Hi folks, I hope you're doing well. Blake here, and I'm back with a brand new YouTube video, and this one is a guide to hopefully help you get your covers onto Spotify and pretty much everywhere else. This idea for a video was born out of the fact that so far this year I'm doing okay in terms of my single releases. So I've just released a brand new song. It's called Soar Like a Rocket. It's about the inspiring people in life that pick you up to build your rocket and shoot for the stars in pursuit of your dreams. And I'd really love you to check that out. The link for that is down below. But before that, way back in March, you may remember that I released a collaborative cover. If you've not seen this yet, this may be because of copyright limitations, meaning I couldn't do too much advertising of it, which I'll come back to in a moment. And there's also the reason there's no YouTube video, for instance, for it. But back in March, I recorded with a collaborator, Matty Twig, a very talented musician and producer, a cover of the 1984 soft rock classic, I Want to Know What Love Is by Foreigner. Once again, I'll put the link to that down below, but just to give you the background, once I'd released that, I had a few different musician folks message me and ask, how does it work in terms of copywriting? If I want to release a song, I want to put it on Spotify and Amazon and Apple Music and all that sort of thing, how do I go about it if I didn't write the song and I just do a kind of my own production of it? So I wanted to get into it here. And just before I start, I want to make two disclaimers. The first one is I'm not a copyright lawyer. I'm going to go through all the bits I had to understand to release a song and put it on the different streaming platforms and things you might want to look out for. But I'm not the be-all and end-all of copyright law, and if you have very specific questions, I can try and answer if you put them in the comments, but realistically, if it's quite specific, you might have to go and do some further digging. And the second point I want to make is that some of this information will depend on your distributor and or your label. If you're independent, that will be most aligned to what I did, but if you have a specific distributor or a specific label that have relationships with the publishing companies, they might have their own ways of doing things and their own people in the company that reach out and get copyright approval and that sort of thing for you. So let's get into it. Here's how to put your covers on streaming platforms. So we're going to start with the good news, and that is for the music streaming sites. So sites like Spotify, Amazon Music and Deezer. I'm not 100% sure about YouTube Music. In theory it might be okay if there's no video element, and I'll come on to talk about that later. But YouTube has a content ID kind of platform within it, as anyone who makes YouTube videos will know, when your videos might get flagged for using someone else's music, for instance. So that makes it a bit more complicated, but we'll come back to that. But in terms of the music streaming platforms where people aren't downloading and paying for your song, they're just streaming it, and you get a tiny fraction of the money from it in comparison to, obviously, when you're selling a song on Apple Music or Bandcamp or something like that. In those cases, Spotify and all those kind of things have their own relationship with the publishing houses, which is really good news for you. All that means is, depending on who your distributor is, when you're going through and submitting a song, all you've got to do is put in the information in terms of who is the rights holder for the song. So to clear this up, there are two types of right holders for songs. There's one who is the original composition holder. They are the original writers of the song. So in my case, the writer for Foreigner. And then there's the second one, who is the owner of this new recording. So if you've newly recorded a song, it's your cover of it, you own the recording, or you and your producer, whoever, own the recording, but nevertheless the master rights of the song, the composition rights, belong to the original songwriter. What that means is, when you're submitting your music to Spotify or Amazon or anyone like that, all you've got to do is put on that it is actually a cover and you don't own the music, and then put in the details about which publishers, which songwriters own the rights to the music. By doing that, you are saying to Spotify, here's all the truthful information, and they can then pass that financial information onto the writer. So that's the good news, is when you're not selling a song, when you're just putting it on there for streaming purposes, you, in theory, can just do that. I also have read on a few different blogs and things that there's not really a reason for them to say no if it's just going on like a streaming platform, you've re-recorded the song. It is still belonging to them and all the rights will go to them, so as long as you've signed the rights over and said, this is a cover, it's not my own song that I've written, then it's fine in terms of just purely music streaming services. So next up, it gets a bit more complicated, and this is considering places like Apple Music, for instance, where you would sell the cover song. So people would download it and pay you for your version of the original song. In this case, most of the time you'll need a mechanical license. Now, what you might be interested to know is different countries have different laws on copyright. So there's only a few of them actually where a distinct mechanical license is needed. So you could also, another option is not choose the places where you want to sell your music if that requires a mechanical license. So that includes Mexico, the US, Canada, India and Pakistan are 5 of the really big kind of markets which require you to get individual mechanical licenses. If you're watching this and you're a musician, you probably want to sell your music, especially places like the US, so you might want to get a license to do so. So the reason that some countries and markets have requirements for a mechanical license and some don't is a bit complicated, but essentially the ones that don't have kind of agreed in principle with publishing companies already certain terms, which means when you produce a cover, that will all be taken care of. But by and large, you need to get song licensing, especially if you're considering places like the US and Canada, for instance, to try and sell your music online. So just a bit earlier, I mentioned different distributors. I'm with Horus Music, who are quite a small independent music distributor, and I really like them. But because they're a kind of smaller company, they don't have some of the resources that the bigger ones have. So lots of you might be with either DistroKid or TuneCore. They're 2 very big distributors. And if you are, luckily for you, they have their own kind of relationships already with publishing companies. So often, if you mark in that you're releasing a cover and then put it on their distribution site, they can kind of take care of that and get in touch with the people that own the original recording of the song to get you your mechanical license. For US-based musicians and distributions of music, a lot of people use the Harry Fox agency, and I think this is who DistroKid go through as well. And they are a really big publishing company that own the rights or can obtain the rights to songs if you want to cover them. So if you are with those distributors, get in touch with the distributor and they'll give you more information about how exactly you can follow that and release your own cover. But for those musicians who are independent or they're not with those distributors, I can recommend using easysonglicensing.com, which is what I used for my cover. So it's an online website, it's easy to use, and basically what you do is you put in your information in terms of the recording you took, when it's been released, all that sort of thing. Then you put in the information about the song itself, when that was released, who the songwriter is. You can usually search on their database and find out if you don't know who the songwriter is, or even a quick Google search will often tell you who the songwriter is if it's, quite well-known song. And then you put in the details and you request a mechanical license and you pick how many copies you would like your license to cover. So quite importantly, your license will work until you've sold that many copies of the song. So I'd say unless you've got a big audience, obviously when you release a song, most people put it on all of the platforms. So it might be on Amazon, Apple, Spotify and everything like that. So when you're considering how many copies your license should cover, I'd say don't put hundreds or thousands of copies, because that means it will cost much more and ultimately you've got to sell hundreds or thousands of copies on Apple Music or similar. If you have the audience to do that, then amazing. But if you don't, then I'd say that's going to be quite a big money sink. But it's actually quite cheap. If you just put in, say, 20 copies, I'm going to say 20, I think I did 25, something like that. And once you've got the license, it's cheaper to then renew it. So if you find that you sell 20, 25 copies, you can then renew it and order another 50, let's say. You can also order a kind of stamp of authenticity from the website. So this basically proves that this cover has been approved for, mechanical distribution, and they let you download that. It's a little bit extra, but it's not too expensive to do. And when you've got that licensing in hand, you're then able not only to share the song to Spotify and all the streaming platforms, but also to the download platforms. So I just want to make a couple more notes to cover any kind of blanks. So the first thing to say is you can obviously get directly in touch with a publishing house. So if you're finding that for whatever reason you've got very specific requirements, let's say you're trying to release a song and you're big in a specific demographic, specific region, they need mechanical licensing, And Easy Song licensing that I've just mentioned is, I think, principally for the US. So let's say you want cover licensing for India. I'm sure there's dedicated kind of licensing companies for India, but you can also directly get in touch with the publishing house that owns the copyright for the song to get their approval. It might be more expensive because it's kind of a more bespoke request, but you can also do that. So bear that in mind if you're trying to reach a particular market and you need a distribution license for that. And a couple of things to consider for the mechanical license. So if you use Easy Song licensing or similar and you're planning to release the song in the US, this only covers songs that have already previously been released in the US, and this is kind of a cover of one of those previously released songs. It also only covers the US and not other kind of countries, so you have to get a separate distribution license for each country that requires them. Most of the EU and similar don't, but you know, if you need one for a particular demographic, then you need to look into that. As well as that, as I'll come on to discuss, and it's the reason I don't have a YouTube video for my cover, it doesn't include the video, it only includes the audio that you put up there. So the video is not automatically covered. And then on top of that as well, if you're doing a cover song which you've released, it doesn't allow for big changes to the melody or the lyrics. So that's kind of a little bit different. It has to be basically a direct take on the original, and usually your distributor will ask you to name the song pretty much exactly the same way as the original was named, to kind of reaffirm, and I think it's for legal purposes, to reaffirm that it is a cover of a previously released track. And in this final third of the video, I'm going to talk about social media. So this gets a little bit more complicated. Social media, things like Facebook, Instagram and YouTube especially, have Content ID built into them. And what that is it's basically a little bit of AI software which will recognize specific melodies and lyrics and can link that to copyrighted music. What that means is, unfortunately, you can't release a cover on social media in the same way that you can release it on Spotify. They don't have a kind of agreed deal with the publishing houses, so it will recognize that you're using copyrighted music and it will stop you from doing that. And again, you need to kind of find specific agreements with the publishing houses to let you do that. That's one of the reasons why, sadly, although I'm very happy about my cover that I released with Matty, it's not had too many plays because you're a little bit limited in the promotion you can do, because you can't put out all the clips of you kind of performing the song. I mean, you could do a kind of live acoustic performance, I suppose, but you can't, you know, release the track, the kind of master recording of the track on social media without a lot of copyright coverage first. And where this gets especially complicated is when video is involved. So for my new release, Soar Like a Rocket, there's going to be a music video very soon, and I can't wait to share that with you. But sadly, I couldn't make a music video for the cover I Want to Know What Love Is, and that's because you need another license once again. So as well as the distribution license, which you need to put it on various social medias, and you'll need to have an agreement with the publisher, social media is of course a very kind of visual content. It's based on pictures and videos. So if you're playing the cover that you've made and it's over a picture or a video that you've yourself made, the publisher and basically the original writer has to approve that. You have to get what's called a sync license separately from your distribution license. So this gets really complicated and more expensive, and it's the reason I've not put anything about the song, the kind of recording of the song or anything, on, you know, social media for that purpose. So what I'd say is, if you wanted to do that, you can. Just bear in mind it's going to be a lot more legwork. You're going to have to get several distribution licenses, and it's going to have to cover picture and video as well as audio. So it's going to probably cost you more and be a bit more of a pain. But in terms of putting it on streaming sites, it's very easy. Putting it on download sites, it's not too hard if you use a kind of licensing type software website, and then putting it on social media is a bit harder still. However, as there always is, there's an exception to the rule, and that is TikTok. So if you go through SoundOn, which is TikTok's own sort of distribution platform, you can put songs on there and specify that they are covers that you're uploading. So I've done that with mine, and it's on TikTok. Obviously at the moment that means you don't need a distribution license, I believe, to put it on TikTok. Definitely check that, because it could change over time, as we've seen with the whole Universal TikTok relationship changing over time as well. but at the moment I believe you can, if you go through SoundOn, specify that you can put your music up there. When you're using SoundOn to submit music, you also have to specify whether or not the song can be used commercially, i.e. by other companies and things. So I imagine if you're getting to that point, you're going to have to be very careful in terms of what licensing you have. You might not be able to do that for covers, I'm not actually sure, but I just thought I'd mention that because there might be some leeway depending on what social media you are looking at. So thank you very much for watching. That was my rough guide on how to put a cover song on Spotify and pretty much everywhere else. If you liked the video, please like it and let me know, or please comment as well. And if you have any questions, I can try my best to answer them. I don't know if I'll manage it, but if not, hopefully you can do a bit of digging online, go to one of the licensing companies I mentioned and ask their kind of representatives there. Or if you leave a comment down below, maybe someone more kind of knowledgeable in the area than me might be able to answer. And if you're a fan in general of anything music, then I not only do kind of guides like this, I also do vlogs, I do my own music releases and official music videos, one coming very soon. I do covers, I do gag reels, guitar lessons, all that kind of stuff. So if you're into any of that, please consider clicking subscribe and notification bell buttons, then you get notified every time I do a new video. Thanks very much, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.
When you put me in your breast pocket, you make me soar like a rocket. You give me energy, you stock it, yeah. You make me soar like a rocket.